Elara Moore kept a jar of ash on her bookshelf like a saint's relic. Not because she was insane. Because sometimes, only sometimes, when the moonlight hit the glass just right, the ash pulsed. A faint, impossible heartbeat. And every time it happened, Jonah, her 8-year-old brother in a wheelchair, would look up from his homework, eyes glazed like he was listening to a song no one else could hear. Then he'd say the same thing every time, with the calm certainty of a child who has already died once. "We've done this before." Elara would laugh like she didn't understand. Like that sentence didn't slice her open. But deep down, she knew. Because she couldn't remember the before. Only the bruises it left behind. And tonight, when the ash in the jar began to beat again, Elara's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Welcome back, Sunblood. Let's see if you love him this time." No one warned Elara Moore that monsters could wear tailored suits and patient smiles. She took the job at Ashcroft Holdings because the bills didn't care about nightmares. Jonah's care was expensive: wheelchair repairs, breathing treatments, a specialized school that didn't pity him. And she refused to let him become another discarded kid in a system that swallowed children whole. Ashcroft Holdings only hired at night. That should have been her first red flag. Her boss, Lucien Ashcroft, owned the tallest building in the city and never appeared in daylight. He spoke softly, moved silently, never ate in front of anyone, never blinked at the right time. People didn't talk about him like a man. They talked about him like weather. "He's coming. He's in the building. He noticed you." Her only friend there was Mara Vale, a deaf security guard with sharp eyes and quicker hands. Mara signed warnings like she was trying to save Elara's life without making a sound. "Don't go to the 30th floor. Don't accept drinks. If you smell roses at midnight, run." Elara smiled, nodded, lied. Because poverty teaches you a cruel skill, ignoring danger when you need the paycheck more than you need safety. Then came the night Elara found the archive room. It wasn't on any floor plan. A door behind a mirrored wall opened into a chamber lined with contracts written in blood-red ink. Names dated 1912, 1789, 1603, some of them still active. Some of them still collecting. At the bottom of every page, one signature appeared like a brand carved into history. Ashcroft. Elara's hands shook as she photographed everything. Then the temperature dropped. The scent of roses flooded the room. And the door closed by itself. Lucien's voice came from the dark, polite, and tired. "Give it back, Elara." She spun and saw him standing in the doorway like he'd always been there, like the shadows belonged to him. Elara tried to rush past. Lucien caught her wrist. And he recoiled like he'd grabbed fire. Smoke curled from his palm. His skin blistered in the shape of her fingers. His eyes widened, not with rage, with horror. "What are you?" he whispered. Elara didn't answer. She ran. But no one outran a vampire. Cliffhanger beat. As she hit the stairwell, every exit sign flickered at once, and for a second, Elara saw herself reflected in the glass, except the reflection wasn't hers. It was her, covered in blood, holding a jar of ash. And Jonah's voice echoed in her head like a memory she didn't own. "We've done this before." Lucien had lived 3 centuries without resistance. Humans bent. Minds shattered. Bodies obeyed. But Elara? His compulsion slid off her like water. His blood magic cracked against her skin like glass. She should have been terrified. Instead, Lucien looked like he was. He didn't chase her like prey. He chased her like an answer. He found her before she reached the street because the city was his. Every camera turned away. Every taxi light went out. Every stranger suddenly didn't see her. Elara stumbled into her apartment with shaking hands and found her locks already undone. Lucien sat on her couch like he paid rent. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. Elara grabbed a kitchen knife. Lucien looked at the blade, almost amused. "You can't kill what's already dead." She threw the knife anyway. It hit him in the chest. He didn't flinch. But when she rushed forward to retrieve it, panicking, her fingers brushed his hand. He hissed like his bones were being burned. Not acting. Not pretending. Real pain. Elara froze. Lucien stared at his blistered skin, then at her, and something fractured in his eyes. "You shouldn't exist," he murmured. "Not like this." He stood slow, controlled. Then he did the unthinkable. He locked her inside the penthouse, high above the city. Not as prey, but as a question. She learned quickly. Lucien couldn't hurt her. But the world outside could. And it did. Because Jonah disappeared. Not from her apartment. Not from a careless babysitter. Jonah vanished from his care facility, a secured building with locked doors and staff who swore they'd never let him out of their sight. No forced entry. No camera footage. Just Jonah's wheelchair left facing a wall like punishment. Then a message arrived carved into the marble of Lucien's penthouse wall, letters cut so deep they looked ancient. "Give us the girl. Or the boy bleeds." Lucien's face went blank. Not cold. Worse. Guilty. Because he realized too late, his enemies had been watching. And Elara wasn't the first girl who burned him. Cliffhanger beat. That night, Elara woke to Lucien whispering in another language, like a prayer. And the ash jar from her reflection appeared on the shelf, even though she had never owned it. The worst-case scenario arrived quietly. Jonah was poisoned with a rare venom only vampire blood could neutralize. The council didn't attack Lucien directly. They attacked the child. Because the council understood the real weakness. Elara's love wasn't for Lucien yet. It was for Jonah. Lucien's blood would save Jonah. But the cure required prolonged physical contact. Elara held Jonah trembling as Lucien knelt beside them, close enough to feel her warmth, close enough to feel his skin blister. Lucien screamed. Not from pain. From restraint. Because every instinct told him to pull her close. And every second he resisted was killing him. Jonah survived. Lucien collapsed. His heart stopped for 7 minutes. When he came back, his first words weren't to Elara. They were to Jonah. "What do you remember?" Jonah's eyes glossed. He whispered, "You died again." Lucien closed his eyes like a man hearing a familiar sentence in court. Jonah added softly, "But you always smile when you burn." Melis arrived without opening a door. Her presence smelled like extinguished candles and old iron. One eye socket was empty. The other was covered in a silver veil. Her leg was twisted. She wore a metal brace carved with sigils, and every step sounded like the strike of a blade. She looked at Elara like she recognized her. Not as a stranger. As a repeat. "Elara Moore," she said. "Or is it Quinn this time? You change your last name every loop. How adorable." Elara's stomach dropped. "Loop?" Melis explained with cruel calm. Elara was born under a celestial anomaly. A soul-bound fire designed to destroy immortals. She wasn't just immune. She was lethal. If she ever loved Lucien fully, heart, body, soul, his curse would complete itself. He would burn alive. Elara turned to Lucien, horrified. He smiled bitterly. "I've survived wars," he said. "But I won't survive wanting her." Melis leaned in, voice velvet and venom. "You think this is fate. It isn't. It's a mechanism. Every time you fall in love, girl, the night resets. Your memory wipes. Jonah forgets everything, except one detail. And Lucien." She smiled. "Lucien dies. Every time." Elara's hands shook. "What's the point?" Melis's veil fluttered like it was breathing. "The point is entertainment. And punishment. And balance. The city feeds on tragedy the way vampires feed on blood." Then Melis offered Elara a bargain. "Kiss him, and you will unlock what he truly is. And what you truly are." Elara realized too late. This wasn't a romance prophecy. This was a trap. Melis touched Elara's forehead with one cold finger, and Elara saw flashes, dozens of lives, dozens of deaths. Lucien turning to ash in her hands again and again and again. Lucien took Elara underground, beneath a ruined cathedral, through catacombs once used to transport bodies during the plague. Mara met them there, already waiting, signing fast and furious. They're moving tonight. The kids aren't safe. You brought her here? Not my choice, Lucien said quietly. The sanctuary below the cathedral was not a hideout. It was a home. For children society discarded. Disabled kids. Foster kids. Kids who see things. Kids whose families sold them for debts. Kids the Vampire Council would harvest. And Jonah was there. Alive. But different. He looked at Lucien like he was looking through him. Then Jonah whispered to Elara. He's not the scariest one. Elara's blood went cold. Because Jonah pointed behind Lucien, at nothing. And said, clear as day. There's a woman in the dark with no eyes. Lucien went rigid. Mara's hands shook as she signed. Not her. Lucien's voice dropped to a whisper. Melis. The Vampire Council didn't tolerate anomalies. Especially not children. Jonah's disability made him invisible to predators, until now. Because the Council discovered Jonah could see through vampire illusions. He saw them as they truly were. And the Council wanted to dissect him. Lucien refused. For the first time in centuries, he chose rebellion over survival. But rebellion had a price. The Council marked him. A blood sentence burned into his chest like a living scar. Love her and die. Elara stared. What does that mean? Lucien didn't answer. Because the answer was worse than death. Cliffhanger beat. Jonah leaned toward Elara and whispered the one detail he never forgot, even when everything else reset. He always dies on the same night. Elara's fire didn't destroy Lucien. It freed him. The curse shattered. Lucien became mortal. For the first time in 300 years, his heart beat on its own. But freedom came with a price. Mortal means killable. And the Council had been waiting for that. They didn't flee. They hunted. Mara signed, frantic. The loop is unstable. The city is bleeding time. Jonah rolled toward Lucien one day, voice small. So, are you still a monster? Lucien smiled. Only when I forget to be human. Jonah stared at him for a long time. Then Jonah said the one detail that made Elara's blood run cold. You say that every time. Lucien's smile vanished. Because he understood something Elara didn't yet. If the loop was breaking, it meant the ending would change. And the city never allowed happy endings. Cliffhanger beat. That night, Elara found a hidden drawer in the sanctuary desk, filled with letters addressed to her, in her own handwriting, dated across centuries. The newest one read, Don't kiss him again. You'll reset the world. The Council returned. They offered Elara a deal. Kill Lucien with a kiss, and they would spare the children. Jonah. Mara. The sanctuary kids. Elara stood over Lucien's unconscious body. The monster who never touched her. The man who chose children over power. She leaned down and whispered, I love you. The curse ignited. But instead of Lucien burning, the city shook. Because the prophecy was wrong. Or worse, the prophecy was incomplete. Lucien's curse didn't just kill him. It powered something. A machine older than the city. The reason the loops existed. Elara's love wasn't a trigger for death. It was a key in a lock. And the lock was turning again. The sanctuary lights flickered and every child in the room spoke at once in the same voice. Reset. Jonah's eyes glossed. He whispered, You died again. Lucien closed his eyes like a man hearing a familiar sentence in court. Jonah added softly, But you always smile when you burn. Elara's fire didn't destroy Lucien. It freed him. The curse shattered. Lucien became mortal. For the first time in 300 years, his heart beat on its own. But freedom came with a price. Mortal means killable. And the council had been waiting for that. They didn't flee. They hunted. Mara signed, frantic. The loop is unstable. The city is bleeding time. Jonah rolled toward Lucien one day, voice small. So, are you still a monster? Lucien smiled. Only when I forget to be human. Jonah stared at him for a long time. Then Jonah said the one detail that made Elara's blood run cold. You say that every time. Lucien's smile vanished. Because he understood something Elara didn't yet. If the loop was breaking, it meant the ending would change. And the city never allowed happy endings. Cliffhanger beat. That night, Elara found a hidden drawer in the sanctuary desk, filled with letters addressed to her, in her own handwriting, dated across centuries. The newest one read, "Don't kiss him again. You'll reset the world." Elara's fire didn't destroy Lucien. It freed him. The curse shattered. Lucien became mortal. For the first time in 300 years, his heart beat on its own. But freedom came with a price. Elara didn't sleep after finding the drawer. She sat on the sanctuary floor with Jonah beside her, the jar of ash on the table like a witness, and dozens of letters spread out in a halo around her knees, each one sealed with wax stamped with a sunburst. Her handwriting, her name, her voice, trapped in ink across centuries. Some letters were gentle. Some were frantic. Some were smeared like the writer was crying so hard the page drowned. One line appeared again and again. Don't fall in love. Don't touch him. Don't kiss him. And yet, every letter ended the same. I did anyway. Elara's hands trembled as she opened the newest letter, the one dated 3 weeks from now. It smelled like smoke. Elara, if you're reading this, it means the loop is breaking again. Lucien is mortal. The council will come for Jonah first. They always do. And you will always choose the same thing. You will reset the world to spare your brother the grief. You will tell yourself it's love. It is. But it's also the cruelty you become to keep him breathing. If you want the horror to end, you have to stop saving him. Elara's throat closed. Jonah, watching her, spoke quietly. Don't believe it. Elara blinked, startled. You can read, she whispered. Jonah smiled like she'd just remembered the wrong thing. I always can, he said. You just don't always notice. Then Jonah's gaze drifted to the jar of ash. He said softly, he's waking up again. And the ash pulsed. A heartbeat in dust. Not a resurrection. A summoning. Mara returned with blood on her sleeve and terror in her hands. She signed one word. Melis. And Lucien, still mortal, still healing, went pale. They found Melis in the cathedral ruins where the city's oldest stones drank moonlight. She stood barefoot in the snow like she didn't feel cold. Like cold was a permission slip. Elara, Melis said, as if greeting a neighbor. You found the letters. Good. I was tired of leaving them. Elara stepped forward. Why did you do this? Why the loop? Melis's mouth curved. Because I loved him. Lucien's jaw tightened. Don't. Oh, Lucien, Melis purred. You never let anyone say the ugly truths about you. Then she told them the origin, slow, cruel, cinematic. 3 centuries ago, before Lucien became what he was a human noble with a dying sister. The kind of man who would sell his soul for one more breath from someone he loved. Melis was a witch then, young, brilliant, limping even in her youth. She didn't have her silver veil. She still had her eyes. She still believed magic was meant to heal. Lucien came to her and begged. Melis gave him a bargain. Not for money. For devotion. She gave him immortality. And he gave her a promise. Then the council came, ancient vampires who didn't want new immortals unless they were controlled. They captured Melis, ripped knowledge from her mind, and forced her to create a weapon. That weapon became Lucien. To complete the transformation, Lucien had to kill a human. Melis thought he would refuse. Instead, Lucien killed the nearest girl. A stranger. A sacrificial body. He didn't hesitate. And Melis felt something inside her tear in half. "I watched you become a monster," Melis whispered. "And I realized the only thing worse than your cruelty was your ability to feel nothing about it." Lucien's voice cracked. "I did it to survive." Melis smiled without warmth. "And I created the hollow vow so you would survive forever, without ever being held." She lifted her veil slightly, just enough for Elara to see what was underneath. Not emptiness. Not blindness. Something burned out deliberately. Melis had removed her own eyes as payment to anchor the loop, because the loop required a watcher who would never look away. "I engineered time like a cage," Melis said. "Because immortals don't learn unless suffering repeats. And I needed you to learn what loss feels like." Elara's stomach twisted. "But why me?" Melis's lips curved. "Because you're the only one who can make him love. And love is the only punishment he can't charm his way out of." That night, the council struck again, because Melis had spoken near the old stones, and the city's blood trails woke up. The sanctuary alarm screamed. Kids hid under beds. Mara signed orders like a commander. Lucien grabbed a weapon silver-lined, human-made. And Jonah rolled into the hallway without fear. Elara shouted, "Jonah, get back." Jonah didn't. He raised his hand. And everything stopped. Not metaphorically. Literally. The screaming froze midair like a statue. The flickering lights held their breath. Elara's hair hung suspended as if gravity forgot her. Only Jonah moved. He rolled closer to Elara, eyes dark with something ancient. "Elara," he said gently, "you're going to panic. And when you panic, you'll do the thing you always do." Elara's mouth wouldn't work. Jonah touched her forehead with 2 fingers. And she saw it. The truth. Jonah wasn't just sighted. Jonah was a chronicle child, a human born at the seam of time, a living ledger. His disability wasn't random. It was the disguise time gave him so predators would underestimate him. He was built to remember. But the loop erased most memories from everyone as a mercy. Everyone. Except Jonah kept one detail because the loop needed an anchor. A repeating nail hammered into the wall of reality. Lucien always dies. Not because time was cruel. Because Jonah needed to warn her. Because even when Elara forgot everything, she would still flinch at that sentence. And flinching would lead to the reset. Jonah whispered, "You reset the world when you can't bear it. When you can't accept his death or mine." Elara's eyes filled. Jonah continued, almost tender. "You made the loop, Elara." The frozen world around them trembled. Not consciously, Jonah added. "But love doesn't need permission to become a spell." The council breached the sanctuary. Time snapped back into motion with a roar. Screams returned. Doors slammed. Fire ignited. Worst case scenario again, because the city loved repeating its cruelty. Lucien tried to pull Elara away from the children. "Don't," she cried. "Not again." Lucien's hands hovered inches from her waist, shaking. He still couldn't hold her without pain. But he could stand between her and danger. And that was its own kind of intimacy. Mara tackled a vampire, jaw clenched, hands moving fast, signs turned into strikes. Jonah coughed, oxygen rattling. Elara moved to him, panic rising like floodwater. And she felt it. That pull inside her chest. That invisible lever that always appeared when grief approached. A door in her soul labeled. Reset. Melis appeared in the doorway, calm as a priest at an execution. "Do it," Melis murmured. "Reset. Save him. Save yourself. Repeat." Elara sobbed. Lucien looked at her with raw surrender. If you reset, he whispered, you'll erase everything we fought for. Elara cried, then tell me what to do. Lucien stepped closer, close enough to blister. Close enough to burn. Close enough to be honest. Let me die, he said. And don't run from it. Elara shook her head violently. I can't. Lucien's eyes shone with something ruined and beautiful. Then you'll become what you fear, he whispered. Because love without surrender becomes control. And Elara realized the most terrifying truth of all. She wasn't the victim of the loop. She was the author. Every time Lucien died, she reset time unconsciously so Jonah wouldn't have to grieve, so she wouldn't have to live with the ash on the shelf. Every reset was her saying, no, not this pain, not this ending. But denying endings didn't create happiness. It created prisons. And prisons create monsters. Millie smiled like she'd won. See, she whispered. I didn't make you evil. I just gave your love permission to show its teeth. The council dragged Jonah toward the ritual chair. Same setup, same cathedral, same moonlight. The city tried to force the ending it always wanted. Elara loves Lucien. Lucien burns. Elara resets. Repeat. Lucien, mortal and bleeding, stumbled toward Elara. His voice was wrecked. Elara, don't. Elara lifted her hand. Time slowed again. Not Jonah's power. Hers. Melis's breath hitched for the first time. Because Melis had built the loop like a cage. But she had never expected the cage thing to learn how to hold the bars. Elara stepped toward Lucien. He shook his head, pleading without words. You'll burn me, he whispered. You'll kill me. Elara's eyes brimmed with tears and something darker underneath. I've killed you 100 times, she said softly. With love. With fear. With resets. Lucien swallowed. Then ended. Elara smiled, small broken. I am. She leaned in and kissed him. Lucien ignited, flames crawling across his skin like holy punishment. He gasped, trembling, trying to pull away to save her the grief. Elara wrapped her arms around him. Held him. For the first time. And instead of burning him to ash, her fire changed. It didn't destroy. It claimed. Lucien screamed. Not in pain. In recognition. Because her curse had evolved into something worse than death. Bond. Elara whispered into his burning mouth. If the world won't let me hold you, I will become the world. The cathedral cracked. The council shrieked. Melis lunged forward, furious. No, this isn't how it goes. Elara looked at Melis with cold clarity. You wanted him punished, Elara said. You wanted me trapped loving him. She tightened her grip on Lucien as his flames dimmed into a black glow. You got your wish. Then Elara did the unthinkable. She didn't reset time. She took control of it. She rewrote the loop. Not to free herself. To lock the world inside her. The city's sky turned blood red. The moon split like an eye-opening. Every contract in Lucien's archive ignited at once, names screaming into smoke. The council tried to run. There was nowhere to run. Because time itself had become Elara's hand. Jonah's chair rolled forward, his eyes wide, tears falling. Elara, he whispered. Please don't. Elara's gaze softened for him, just a crack. I'm doing this for you, she said. Jonah shook his head, voice small but firm. No. You're doing it because you can't let him go. Elara flinched like she'd been slapped. And that was the tragedy. Jonah was right. But love doesn't stop being love just because it turns ugly. Elara turned to Melis. You made him suffer, Elara said. You made me repeat it. You made Jonah remember enough to bleed every lifetime. Melis's veil fluttered. You think you're better than me? Melis hissed. Elara smiled, slow, terrifying. No, she whispered. I think I'm worse. Then Elara made her final move. She didn't kill Melis. She did something crueler. She trapped Melis inside the loop as the new Watcher. Only now, Melis would remember everything, every death, every reset, every time Elara chose love over mercy. Melis screamed. Elara looked at Jonah one last time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then she altered one thing in Jonah's design. She removed the mercy. Jonah would now remember everything. Because if Elara had to become a monster to hold Lucien, she would not be the only one carrying the truth. Jonah sobbed. Mara reached for him, hands shaking, signing, "I'm here." And then Elara turned back to Lucien, who was no longer fully vampire, no longer fully mortal. He was bound to her fire. A beautiful nightmare. He reached toward her cheek, trembling. He touched her. No pain, because she had rewritten reality to allow it. Lucien whispered, devastated, "What did you do?" Elara's eyes were wet, but her voice was calm. "I saved you," she said. Lucien's expression shattered. "You enslaved the world." Elara leaned her forehead to his, intimate as a prayer. "I know," she whispered. "But now I can hold you." Lucien closed his eyes. Because that was the horror romantic ending. He loved her. And love meant he couldn't stop her. He could only stay. The last shot. Elara in the sanctuary, peaceful as a queen. Lucien beside her, devoted as a ghost wearing skin. Melis screaming silently behind a veil of time. Jonah staring at the jar of ash, now empty, because Lucien was no longer ash. And outside, the city repeats the same night forever. A world trapped in midnight. Because a girl who burned the dark finally decided she'd rather be feared than lonely. He fell in love with the one girl his curse would never let him hold. So she became the curse. And held him anyway.